Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
27 years after California's Proposition 209 banned affirmative action in public education, today's Supreme Court ruling will impact private institutions that were not covered under that state law.
Well, certainly with private universities, we'll see ramifications because they haven't had to cope with this over the past couple decades like the public universities have. And so they're going to have to develop new strategies. There probably will be a drop in racial minorities who are admitted to private universities.
Concern already brewing over a possible decline in enrollment among Black and Latino students, similar to what the UC system experienced during the first admission year under Proposition 209.
We've emphasized the importance of diversity and that everyone has a chance to be able to go to the university and to succeed at the university. My biggest worry now is that this will limit access at other universities.
And it's a concern that students of color also have for their future generations.
People aren't just looking at curriculum, they're looking at the student body, and they're looking for people that look like them. So for people who look like me, who want to attend these institutions, this is almost a slap in the face, like, we don't want you here.
Leslie Jacobs, a law professor at University of the Pacific, says that private institutions can learn from what public schools have been doing for decades.
The public universities have developed ways to try to maintain a diverse class without explicitly considering race. And at this point in time, according to the Supreme Court, those ways are okay.
And Professor Jacobs adds that a statute in the Constitution says that private universities have to abide by this rule and ban affirmative action if they take federal money. But if one of these schools says that they are not going to take any more federal money, this wouldn't apply to them. Marisela de la Cruz, KCRA 3 News.
Are you ready?
Hey everybody, it's Jeff. Nice to see everybody. So, I'm out here at Sewell Park today. It's a beautiful day out in Maine today. And I don't know why I had the hankering there to come on out. And I haven't been out here yet, and today's the first time I've come out since summer started. 4th of July is around the corner, and like last year, I don't feel much like celebrating. And you know, last year this time we were all upset about what happened with the Roe versus Wade decision at the Supreme Court. Remember? And I was, really, I felt like somebody had hit me in the gut, because it's like, when I was in school and we were learning about history and government and stuff like that, Roe versus Wade was part of the topic of education, and it's seen as a victory for American privacy and a step forward towards people's freedoms and ability to be able to do for themselves without having a religion or a government agency telling you what you can and can't do with your body. Okay? And anyone who understands what a democracy is, understands that Roe versus Wade, what the Supreme Court had ruled on, was part of the American policy, part of what this country's founded on. And there was no reason at all that why government should interfere in the private lives, especially the health of people as private lives, any more than the government would tell me what kind of pills I should take, for whatever ailment I got. Okay, this is not, the government should be playing doctor. Okay, and and I felt like that's what they were allowed to do with the Supreme Court we have now. And so today, they did 2 rulings. Well, actually, this week. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday. They did was it affirmative action yesterday? I can think it was. But there were 2 rulings that they did this week, and one of them was affirmative action. Okay, and that was a system put into place to try to help people, minorities, ostensibly, to be able to get into a college and not be discriminated against because of their race or their color or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And what I think, as far as I understand it, what it required was that colleges have to have a certain amount of minorities in their colleges in order for that college to be able to to operate without scrutiny. Basically, they had to prove that they are equal opportunity takers for school. It wasn't a perfect policy, but it was a step in the right direction. Okay, I call it sort of a baby step. And at the same time, there were still problems even with affirmative action, where people who had the grades and the intelligence to be able to go to college sometimes would not be able to get in there because the college had to allow certain number of people of minority or colors or something like that to get in there before them, just so they wouldn't it wouldn't be counted against them. And so these smarter people would not be able to get in. It doesn't mean they couldn't apply somewhere else or try at a different time. It just became a problem, because these people, felt they had earned their right to get into college, and they shouldn't have been turned away because the person next to them was black or Hispanic or what have you, and his grades might not be as high, but he has to get in there because they need certain number of black people or certain number of Hispanic people. You know what I'm saying? So that was essentially the kind of flaw that was in that, okay? But it wasn't a flaw that couldn't be corrected, okay, given time, if they actually tried to do it. Now, affirmative action, I don't know how long it's been around. It's been around for a while, in my lifetime. But they really didn't address that problem too much, which I think counts against the government, because they should have went back to that after a couple of years and said, okay, look, we have this problem now, and we need to kind of rewrite this, or change it somehow, so that way we can get people, the right people, into college over just numbers. Okay, just by counting heads of how many blacks we got. It shouldn't be just that. It should be anyone. Okay, if you've got a white person and a black person, they both have the same grades and everything, and they're both smart. Both of them should be able to get in there. Okay, but no school should have the right to say, well, we're going to favor this one over that one. Okay, so maybe the affirmative action law should have been a little more laid out, I guess. It wasn't perfect, in other words. Okay, but like I said, it was a baby step in the right direction. Now, some people will still argue that it wasn't good enough, and they should have rewrote it or some damn thing, or got rid of it. There was always people that were trying to get rid of it that didn't think it was fair. And like I said, there was some cause for people to get upset about it, but certainly a lot of people benefited from affirmative action who got into college who probably wouldn't have otherwise, in certain colleges anyway, because of their race, or what I'm saying. So they benefited a lot from it, okay? And so, like I said, it did help, okay, to a degree. And instead of getting rid of it the way the Supreme Court did, what they should have done was thrown it back to the government. Said, well, you need to rewrite this or something, so that way the flaw in the system can be, the hole in the affirmative action policy can be patched some way, so that way it's more fair. Okay. And the fact that the Supreme Court took the course of shooting it down altogether is a typical Republican answer to everything. That if it doesn't work, destroy it. Okay, if they, and sometimes even if it does work, destroy it. Okay, that's their answer to everything. They never have a backup plan. Like, okay, it's like, well, okay, you want us to get rid of affirmative action. Well, what do you have to take its place to fill that slot? Because we still got, nobody's going to put their life on pause until we come up with an answer here. People are still going to apply for college. And if you go ahead and you do this and you don't have something to plug into the system to replace it, then, you're bringing us back to the point where we didn't have anything at all. And we're going to go right back to discriminating again by the universities and colleges out there. And I feel like maybe that's what they wanted. Maybe that's what the right wing wants. They want to be able to have the right to, they want to be able to discriminate. And it just seems to me like, all they are interested in is taking us back to the 17th, 18th century or something like that, where, a black person is 3/5 of a person. Remember that? And it's just, I feel like how can people in this day and age, after growing up in modern times, possibly think, and they never lived through the times of the slavery, possibly think that going back, way back in that kind of thinking is a good thing. Did they even bother to read their history when they was in school? Did they even think about slavery and racism and how hard it was for minorities to be able to get become part of American society? Did they even care about that, or was that just something that they were goofing off in class, throwing spitballs and carving their name on desks? I mean, was that what they did all the time, and somehow they managed to get good grades because their daddies or somebody paid off the teacher or I mean, we know that this thing happened. These things happen, okay? And the proof is that it happens on the college level. You got what they call legacy folks, people who's had their fathers or grandfathers and great-great-grandfathers go to the same college over the generations. And so when they put their next generation in there, they get favors because, they got a lineage that goes all the way back, And so the legacy students, they get their bread buttered for free. Basically, if you fail a class, they'll give you a C. So that way you can pass and move on. And, so we know shit like that goes on. Why not in the public level? Why not, public teachers getting their palms greased so their kid can get through school and graduate? That there's no reason why that doesn't happen. Okay, it would. If it happens there, it happens at the public level. So, like I said, I feel like today a lot of people are really furious about that, and they got every right to be, because it was an important step we took when we created affirmative action. And like I said, it did benefit a lot of people. Okay, yeah, it didn't work 100%. But that was an issue that could have been fixed if they'd have taken the time over the years to actually look at that and say, could we write this better? Could we amend it so that way it addresses, schools not being, how can I say it, bludgeoning, or draconian, and making sure that certain numbers of races get into the college over others, And I feel like, it could have been an easy fix, but I think the Republicans were more interested in just shooting it down than fixing it, because they didn't like any idea at all about taking the ability away from universities and colleges to just say you can't, and leave it at that, okay? Which is what's going to happen now, okay? We're going to see a lot of that happening. And, for these people to argue that, we don't have any more racism in this country anymore, so these schools aren't going to do that anymore, don't believe that for a second, okay? They've been after this since the damn thing was created, okay? Since affirmative action was created, they were arguing way back then that there was no more racism in this country. And look at all the things that's happened since today. We've had a lot of racist things going on in this country, even to this day. So to go around and say, we don't have any more racism anymore, and we don't need affirmative action anymore because of it, they're lying out their ass, and we ought to be able to say we're calling you out on because we know you're full of shit. Okay, we got cops out there beating the hell out of black people, killing them even. Okay, we got riots, all the time. All this stuff. I mean, it's no safer now than it was back then. Okay, let's just put it like that. In fact, I think in many ways it's probably escalated a lot since then. But racism is alive and well in this country, and it always will be so long as people try to tell us that it ain't there. Stop pissing on me and telling me that it's rain. Okay, that's basically what I'm trying to say. The Republicans are good at that. They're very good at convincing people when they're pissing on you that it's raining out. Okay, but people need to stop swallowing the crap. Okay, we all know what the Supreme Court is. Okay. Their approval numbers are like in the fucking tank right now, less than 20% approval in this country. Hardly anybody in America even likes the court now, okay? So we ought to know automatically that whatever they tell us is bullshit. They find in the Constitution or in history any fucking material that they can find to justify what they're doing, just like an evangelist will find anything in the Bible to back up the shit that he says, okay? Because these things can be twisted and the meaning extrapolated and turned inside out. You know what I'm saying? They can find a way to argue, like they could come out and say, well, slavery should be allowed to come back because of this, and this. Taking things completely out of context just to justify that it's legal or it should be legal in America to have slavery. That's going to be coming up. I guarantee you, we're going to have to revisit that. Okay, since the Supreme Court is so hell-bent on fucking bringing us back to the fucking Stone Age, basically. And I just think that, if you let people like that tell you what's up and what's down, you're basically letting yourself just get stepped on, okay? And right now, there isn't a whole lot we can do with the justices that are in there now, but there's a lot of talk going around about term limits, and I think that's a good thing to bring up. Maybe we ought to have term limits in there. Okay, everything else in government essentially has term limits, right? So why not the Supreme Court? Why do they get to stay in that job till they're dead? Why? That's like the last bastion of the England type of fucking government that when we left there from. That's like the last part of our government that still kind of gravitates into that royalty kind of shit. We're here for life, and that really shouldn't be like that at all. Those justices can't stay there for life, okay? Yeah, I know we have a problem in our Senate and stuff where people keep getting reelected over and over again, no matter how many times. There's a problem with that too, and there should be limits on that. But especially for the Supreme Court, they should always have that door open to be for people to vote them out or something. And it shouldn't be chosen by government. It should be chosen by we, the voters, should be the ones picking in the justices and who should sit there on the bench or not. Another good idea was expanding the court to include more judges because, it's too lopsided for one thing, okay? And it doesn't represent, fairly represent everything, the country as it is population-wise, okay? And so they figure there should be more. In my opinion, I don't think we should have a Supreme Court. I think that the idea of a Supreme Court with over 360, million Americans in here is kind of laughable because they really can't do anything with that many people. Like I told you before, they get thousands of requests every year from different attorneys to have their cases reviewed in the Supreme Court. And they're only going to pick the ones that get them the most attention. Okay? They're only going to pick the ones that get them the most attention. A lot of these cases are just thrown under the desk and they never heard from again. And so you're lucky to even get picked. And if you look through history and you see the cases the Supreme Court had to deal with, they were always cases that were of a mainstream kind of thing at the time. All right. And this is the reason why I don't like that court is because they can pick and choose whatever they want. They don't actually have to do a job, okay, that, goes for everybody. You know what I'm saying? They don't have to do everybody. They just do what they want. And I don't think that's right. I think if you're a court, you should be able to hear everybody's cases. So having one court that does all that is illogical. It doesn't make any sense. So I think that every state should have their own, okay, as it does. We have state Supreme Courts and stuff like that. And I think that's as high as it should go. And they can take most of the workload away from the Supreme Court, if not all of it. And what the states get for cases would be far less than what the Supreme Court has to look, and you would have a better chance at being able to get things settled that way. And yes, it leaves the door open for some courts to be right wing and some to be left wing. Okay, that goes back to, again, to allowing the citizens to choose who the justices are in those courts. And you know what I'm saying? So it's just, it still emphasizes the importance of people getting heard and getting seen by the courts for issues that they have to deal with. Not something that might be important for everybody, but something that could be just important for that individual. I mean, the individual shouldn't be stepped on because, we got a case here involving drug addiction or something like that on a national scale. That should be heard over somebody who was found innocent, or who was innocent of a crime that he didn't commit and shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? They can't be doing stuff like that. And the Supreme Court is really flawed in that way. It's just, I don't feel like it's adequate. Expanding the justices is one thing, but that's just expanding on the problem. They still get to pick and choose what they want to look at. And when people say, well, I'm going to take this to the Supreme Court, they make it sound like they can do that tomorrow, but it languishes on the desks for months, years, sometimes that could be too long, and I just feel like that's really not fair to people that really need, who have a really important issue that they got to have dealt with by the court, and not something that is a political agenda for some party. And you know what I'm saying, you're putting politics over the people in that way. So okay, let's go to commercial break.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me!
This is me.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Ruth McLaughlin, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me. This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it. It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
Okay, welcome back. Okay, so the other thing that I was going to mention here was the student debt relief plan was struck down by the Supreme Court. Now, if you remember, that was something that President Biden put into place because he felt that the debt that students, former students, owed to the schools that they went to get their degrees was ridiculous. Okay, some of these people are paying on those things more than you'd pay on a house, okay, per month. So he come up with with a way to combat this debt problem by essentially helping them to pay down their debt, if not pay it off completely, so that way they could get their head above water a bit and be able to get their feet in, and be able to just move on through life without having that. Because, when you have debt like that over your head, it hurts your credit rating, and, it makes it hard to get help from banks if you need it, because they see, oh, you got a $50,000 debt here from your time in school and all this, and we just can't, it makes it hard. I mean, that's why a lot of people, I think, today can't get a house, is because they went to college, they racked up a hell of a bill, they can't find a job appropriate to the degree that they got, and now they're stuck. You know what I'm saying? They're stuck because now, you got the price of everything going up, and these people who got degrees have to go on welfare to make it, okay? They're still living at home with their parents, okay? And they feel stagnant, like they can't get out from the situation. And that's true. I mean, if these people can't move out on their own, what becomes of them? How are they, we just don't seem to think that far ahead in this country when it comes to our greed, okay? The schools ask so much money for the time they give the students that it's really unreasonable, I think. I mean, these times prove that it really is unreasonable what these colleges and universities are asking students to pay for how many years of schooling, okay? It's not fair. These people pay a lot of money in total for their education just to get a job that pays them $45,000 to $50,000 a year, and they probably owe way more than what they're earning a year in bills to the school. That to me doesn't make any sense. It's like you're paying $100,000 for a $20,000 car. I mean, that's essentially the logic behind it. Okay, so why the fuck do we allow that to go on? It's because they want it that way. And it wasn't until President Biden, come out with this debt forgiveness thing to try to help out. And it was also to stimulate the economy at the same time, because we were just coming out of a pandemic, and, we needed to do something on a lot of things in order to jumpstart the economy. And this was one of the things. And Biden, he's not going to just sit back and let that go. In fact, he already come out today and said he was going to come up with a plan where he can essentially do this under a different name or something like that. And he basically is saying he doesn't give a shit what the court says, but he's going to do what he wants. To me, I would have said, well, fuck the court. Executive order. Okay, that's what I would have said. Executive order. Try and stop me now. That's what I would have done. I'd have been right overnight. Let the court bitch about that to themselves, okay? But as president, I'm going to make sure that the country gets what I promised it. And if they're going to stand in the way with it, then I'm going to just go over their heads with it and just, that's what I'd have done. Because he certainly would have got support there for that. And here's a photograph of somebody or some people in front of the Lincoln Memorial here. There's people standing there holding up a banner, saying that this is illegal. The debt relief plan is illegal. Really? And what they'll do is they'll say, well, they have to take more tax money to pay for that. Like, yeah, if you sat down and you knew math, I doubt these people do, but if they had any mathematical ability, okay, they would find out that what they had to pay more in taxes just to help these students out is insignificant. When you look at how many other people would be taxed for the same thing. Okay, everybody pays a little bit, to help pay down debt that's on everybody's shoulders. And then at the end, in the long term, we reinvest back into the country. Okay, we put educated people into the jobs that they need, and they become productive citizens. They get out from their parents' homes. They start to live on their own. They do things. Okay, how could these same people who probably are housing a son or a daughter or even themselves still living at home, how could they argue against that? How could they say that, being where they are is better than, actually getting out from debt? Okay? What's illegal about that? Everybody that I know has debt, and everybody's always trying to get out from under it. Okay? And sometimes these people have to get help in some government agency or something like that. Even when you go bankrupt, okay, it still costs us all in the end. Even bankruptcy, how much we spend on that per year. It'd probably surprise you. So what's the difference? It's either that, or you let people go bankrupt and say, this is not going to affect your credit history. Okay, you're just going to go bankrupt and the banks are not going to care anymore. It's either we do the debt buyout, or whatever you want to call it, the debt relief program, okay, or you just say people can have as many bankruptcies as they want and the credit rating will never get hurt. Which is it? Which do you want to do? Okay, so there's a lot of blame to go around with this situation, including the banks, because the banks are the ones that are right there in the high schools, okay, with their offers to give kids loans so they can go to college at a high interest rate. Okay, that's wrong. That should never have been allowed to happen, but the schools let them come in there and do that shit. And that's the gimmick, because a lot of kids don't get scholarships. Their grades may not be sufficient enough to grant one. And so their only alternative is to borrow money in order to go to school, okay? Which is a mistake these days. And I hope everybody at this point understands now what the risk is behind borrowing money from a bank to go to school. Because if you read the fine print on these loans, okay, they're not going to let you out of that fucking debt. And you're going to be paying on that for a very long time. It's making money for the banks because the interest they charge is high. And they know that the student won't be paying off that debt anytime soon. So they're guaranteed to get all kinds of profit from the ex-students of these colleges for their probably half their lifetime. And like I said, kids in high school today need to be told that, look, don't do this, because if you can't go to college, then don't borrow money from the banks to go and do it. Okay, there's got to be a better way. You can go to the military, join the military and probably get some aid there through your time in the service to help you through college. It certainly wouldn't be a bad thing to give you time to think about what would be an appropriate job to get into that can actually help you in life, okay, and not spend your money frivolously on jobs that really, and I don't want to criticize, certain institutions, but there are jobs out there that are really more meant to be sort of like, moonlighting jobs instead of your primary income, okay? So, it would give, students a chance to really think seriously about what kind of job would actually help that person make it in life, okay, on a good income. And I know a lot of students right after high school, they go to college, and I see these students today, they're not doing the job that they went to school for. They're doing everything else but. Because the job the schooling that they picked wasn't really that big of a thing to make money on. It's just, it depends on what part of the world you live in, I guess, if you do well in that or not. But, it's just, people, 18, 19 years old, they really haven't really been out in the world yet to really understand the importance of that, and there's no ticking clock, that says if you don't get into college right now, you're never going to be, the college is always there, okay? It's always going to be there, and you can go whenever you want, okay? And you don't even have to go the way they want you to go. You can do these things, okay? There's all kinds of ways you can get the education you need to get the job you want and stuff like that, and you don't have to depend on these used car salesmen that run these banks here to come to you and give you aid. Now, let's see here. I'm going to read this article here about the courts striking down Biden's plan here. In a 6-3 decision, that's split right down the crack, on the party lines, the court's conservative majority ruled that Biden's effort to erase roughly $400 billion of student debt was an illegal use of executive power. The Supreme Court on Friday struck down Biden's plan to cancel up to $20,000 of student debt for tens of millions of Americans, thwarting a major domestic priority of the president as he seeks re-election. In a 6-3 decision, the conservative majority ruled that Biden's efforts to erase that debt was illegal of his executive power. The decision immediately upends debt relief that the Education Department approved last fall for 16 million borrowers and the pending applications of millions of additional borrowers. It also creates fresh political challenges for the White House, which will face pressure from progressives to make good on Biden's promised loan forgiveness despite the legal setback. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for all his Republican-appointed colleagues, rejected the Biden administration's argument that it could enact mass debt forgiveness by using emergency waiver powers tied to the COVID-19 pandemic. Roberts wrote that the HEROES Act allows the Secretary to waive or modify existing statutory or regulatory provisions, but not to rewrite the federal law on student loans from the ground up. Roberts wrote that Biden's plan amounts to the executive seizing the power of the legislature, and that it stretches the pandemic-related emergency measure far beyond its logical bounds. The Biden administration's comprehensive debt cancellation plan cannot fairly be called a waiver. It not only nullifies existing provisions, but augments and expands them dramatically. Roberts wrote, calling the economic and political significance of the move staggering by any measure. Justice Elena Kagan's dissent painted the court's move as a troubling act of judicial overreach and said if it fit a pattern of the court's conservative majority intruding into actions that should be left to the political branches. The court refuses to acknowledge the plain words of a HEROES Act. It declines to respect Congress's decision to give broad emergency powers to the Secretary of Education, Kagan wrote. Quote, it does not let the political system with its a mechanism of accountability operate as normal. It makes itself the decision maker on, of all things, federal student loan policy, and then, perchance, it wonders why it has only compounded the sharp debates in the country. Unquote. The court's decision renders the education secretary powerless, Kagan said, as she read aloud portions of her dissent from the bench Friday. It was the third time in 2 days that a member of the court's liberal bloc chose to dissent orally, a rare move that signals special vehemence, earlier Friday, Justice Sonia Sotomayor read portions of her dissent in a case weakening protections for LGBTQ people, and on Thursday, Sotomayor read portions of her dissent in a case striking down affirmative action in higher education. The HEROES Act, passed in 2003 in the wake of the terrorist attacks of September 11, gave the Education Department special powers to change the typical rules of federal student loans to respond to a national emergency. The law says that the Secretary of Education may, quote, waiver or modify any statutory or regulatory provision, unquote, related to federal student loans, quote, as may be necessary to ensure that, unquote, borrowers, quote, are not placed in a worse position financially, unquote, because of national emergency. The Biden administration argued it needed to cancel student debt for most borrowers to avoid a surge of defaults when it resumes collecting payments for the first time after they've been paused during the pandemic for more than 3 years. The justices delivered rulings on Thursday in a pair of cases challenging the debt relief plan. The first was filed by a group of Republican state attorneys general led by Nebraska and Missouri. A second case was brought by the Job Creators Network Foundation, a conservative group on behalf of 2 federal loan borrowers from Texas who were partially or fully excluded from the debt relief program. A central issue in the cases was whether the Republican-led states and those 2 borrowers had demonstrated the type of concrete injury that was required to have their complaints heard in federal court. The states argued that they had standing based on potential harm to the Missouri Higher Education Loan Authority, known as MOHELA, a contracted education department loan servicer that would face a reduction in borrower accounts to service under debt relief. The conservative majority found that the states had standing to bring the case based on Missouri's claims. The student debt relief program's, quote, harm to MOHELA is also a harm to Missouri, unquote, because the loan servicer is a, quote, public instrumentality, unquote, of the state, Roberts wrote. By contrast, the court ruled unanimously Friday in an opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito that the individual borrowers lacked legal standing to challenge the program. The 2 Texas borrowers had argued that they were injured because they were deprived of the opportunity to submit public comments on Biden's student debt relief plan and advocate for their view that their relief should apply to them. Conservatives celebrated the court's decision, and of course, yada, yada, yada there. Progressives now want the administration to shift its focus to developing another way to cancel student debt that relies on a different law, such as the Secretary of Education's powers to compromise and settle debts under the Higher Education Act. Elizabeth Warren said this fight is not over. The president has more tools to cancel student debt, and he must use them. And he said today after that he was going to try something about that. So it's the fight isn't over. You know, the Supreme Court isn't going to get the final word on this, okay?